Hello everyone, and in this video we are going to discuss, is French defense a good opening or a bad opening to play at a higher level? As we know that French defense can be played in lower level and it actually gives pretty good results in the lower level, as many players are not aware of the French defense as there are many variations. So if you're playing French defense in the lower level, it's great, you can go for it. But today we are going to discuss, can we play French defense in the higher level? And we are going to decide. We are going to decide it. Basically, we are going to conclude this idea. If the world champion Magnus Carlsen is facing the French defense and she's not able to beat it, we can definitely conclude that French defense is definitely a fine opening to play at the higher level, as the world champion can't defeat it. So definitely, it is something special. So basically, we are going to look at a game played in the Chess Olympiad 2022 happening in Chennai, India. And it's the round number 2. Magnus Carlsen is facing George Muir, and Magnus is actually playing from Norway. He actually skipped the first round, and the last Chess Olympiad he played was back in 2016, and now he's playing 2022 Chess Olympiad. Norway is the 3rd seed in the open category, as many teams are not playing the Chess Olympiad like China, Russia, etc. So definitely Norway's first time having some serious chances to take a medal for the country. So Magnus Carlsen, every chess player is having some hope, like Magnus Carlsen can give a big boost to Norway. Basically, we are going to discuss the game. So let's quickly jump into the game. Magnus Carlsen playing with the white pieces starts out with 1e4. And his opponent, Grandmaster George Muir, having a rating of 2600. Although Magnus Carlsen is having more rating, like 250 points above, like even 2600. Definitely Magnus is definitely on a new level. We have e6, the French defense, d4, d5, and knight to c3. And here black goes for d into e4. Knight to f6 and bishop to b4 whenever are the most common replies, but black goes for capturing the pawn on e4, keeping the position very simple. Knight into e4, knight to d7, and here after playing knight to d7, black idea is to play knight to f6. Black doesn't want to put the knight directly to f6 because after knight takes, queen takes. Knight f3, and white has some ideas having bishop to g5, queen g6, bishop d3, again attacking the queen. So these are some problems that black actually faces. That is the reason black played knight to d7, so that after knight f6, now if white captures, black can capture it back with the knight. We have c3, cementing the pawn structure. Knight f6, bishop to d3, developing the bishop. Knight takes, bishop takes, and we have knight to f6. Bishop goes back to c2, c5 by black, pushing up the c pawn. If white captures, black can trade the queens and go into the endgame, which is completely fine for black. So white simply develops his knight to f3. Pawn takes, knight takes, and we have bishop to c5. So basically both the sides are wasting no move. Both the sides are simply rapidly developing the pieces. So now bishop to c5, and now if the knight moves, black would be having an opportunity to trade the queens, and which would actually give a very good result to black, like from the start. Like for example, if knight b3, we have queen d1, bishop d1, and after bishop b6, I think black is already doing pretty fine. Bishop d7, bishop c6, having the bishop pair already equalizing in the opening. I think it's very good for black. So short castle by white, and here Magnus decides to keep the isolated pawn. But in the exchange, white is actually having the bishop pair, which actually gives white decent compensation. b6 by black. Black wants to develop the bishop like this, which would be a very deadly bishop. Queen to d3, bishop to b7, bishop to a4 check. And yeah, black actually usually in this variation particularly, black actually faces some checks issue on the light squares because it's pretty it takes actually time for black to castle. So in that time, white can get some ideas to give black some checks, which actually happened in the position. And it looks like now there are no good move for black. Like if you try to play knight to d7, it already looks a very passive move. I think like this is a very strong move after bishop into d5. Queen to g3 is extremely strong move. This is hanging, and I think this is like many stuffs are coming in. I think you can even go for playing directly queen g3. It's also fine. So black came up with a good move, king f8, which is usually very normal in such positions, in the French position. And it looks like black have destroyed his castling rights, so it must be very good for white. But actually no, nothing is happening. Black is extremely fine. And actually just now look at black's play. White develops the bishop to d2. Black pushes his pawn to h5. Rook c1. White is simply developing the minor pieces, which is the basic fundamentals in a game of chess. h4 by black, pushing his h pawn. h3, because h3 would be a very deadly threat for white. That is the reason white stopped it. And now queen to d6. Now black played queen to d6 so that now there would be no dark square weakness, at least in the diagonal. Bishop to d1. Very, I think it looks a very good move, like covering all the light squares, and perhaps the idea could be to play bishop f3, trading a very powerful bishop on b7. Rook to d8, now hitting the pawn on d4. Rook e1, king to g8. Black, I think, can go for capturing the pawn, but after queen h3 check, king g8, bishop e3, and it's white, I think, getting some compensation, getting some play. That is the reason. Black didn't want it to lose the tension. He wanted to keep the tension. That is why he first made his king safe, so that there won't be any queen checks in the future. Bishop e3, defending the pawn. Knight to d5. Queen d2. Knight takes, pawn takes. Now there are no longer any weaknesses. But now actually, at least the position is equal. I would say black slightly better, but as white can trade the bishops, it's fine. It's already equal. Rook h6, excellent move from the black side. You see, as black have lost his castling rights, now black came up with the move h5 h4, followed by rook h6 and rook g6, and it actually looks like now black is the one who is in the driver's seat, creating some deadly attacking ideas like rook g6, queen g3 perhaps, stuff like that, and the bishop is extremely strong. I think it's very good for black. Rook f1, rook g6, bishop to g4, f5, hitting the bishop, playing bishop to f3. Basically, white deliberately played the move bishop g4 to provoke f5, and then he played bishop f3 to trade the bishops. We have the trade of the bishops, rook g3, rook queen to f2. You definitely don't want to take the rook, because after hg3, the white king is extremely weak. That is the reason rook queen f2, and now we have e5 by black. I think if black wanted, he can simply equalize with rook f3, queen f3, and f4 a good move. And after f4, you have to take the pawn, and after takes, rook takes. It's already a draw. Like, you can just count the pawns. It's an equal material. Although, yeah, it's an equal material and it should be draw, I think. Like if rook c7 like this, we have a5. If you go with something like this, we have rook b4, and now black is the one who is creating actually some pressure. Like if b3, we have king f7. Now this pawn is hanging. So like now actually the king is actually also coming in. So it's completely fine for black at least. But black went for the move e5 and gave up the f5 pawn, but eventually got the d pawn. And here actually after queen into, what actually came up with a good move. Rook check. You can't take the rook because the queen is hanging. A very good move by Magnus. King comes and now rook takes. And now black can't go for making a queen trade because white would simply be a rook up. So black was forced to trade the rooks. And now check, pawn push, queen comes, rook comes, check. And here it looks like perhaps white is getting some counterplay. Perhaps white is getting some counterplay. Yeah. After rook g7, we have the rook trade, and eventually black loses a pawn. Although there is saying that mostly the queen endgames are so tricky, despite being a 2 pawn up, 3 pawns up, it always ends in a draw. So definitely black is already having many great chances to take this to a draw. King g7, queen f4, queen d5. We actually slowly have couple of moves, and eventually black loses another pawn. But now black came with a great idea. Check, check, queen to d2. If you give another check, now the queen is coming in, and now white is the one who is having a good advantage. But black came with a very good move, queen d2, hitting this pawn. And now the only way to protect this pawn is to push it. And now check, queen came back. You see, you can't move the queen, or else black can simply repeat the position and it's a draw. So white made pull the queen back, and now eventually black captures the pawn. So white is again a pawn up. Queen e1 defending this pawn. And here we have a couple of checks, I would say. Couple of checks by both the sides. And eventually we have this position. King h8. So what's happening? White is having 2 pawns on the king side. Black is having 1 single pawn on the queen side. But it's still a draw. It's completely a draw with the help of the engine. Like, we have king h8. Magnus decides to give a couple of checks. Like this. And he finally decides to come up with the king. So white idea is to bring the king, pull the king to a corner and try to checkmate it. But it's a very long process, whereas black queen can at many times start giving white checks and it would be a draw. So queen e4 by black, very good move. g4, Magnus trying to push his pawns. It actually looks very scary for black. I think there would be some attacking, like checkmating chances, but let's see. Queen e3 check, king comes, check, check, queen comes. You can't actually trade the queen, because guys, all those who don't know, just remember, many people are thinking that perhaps this pawn is faster making a queen. Nothing. This pawn can't be queen because of a very logical, I would say, very logical calculation. You see, if the king is in the box like this, you see, you can make a diagonal from this pawn like this, and you would see, if the opponent king is in the box, then the king can catch the pawn. If the king would have been on here, it would not be in the box of the pawn, then the pawn is going to be a queen. But currently, it's draw. It's actually winning for white, because white can go for capturing this pawn. Because like this, if I'll just show you also, you can see. And now it's going to be winning for white. That is the reason after queen f2, he starts to give checks, not trading the queens. Check, check, h6. As long black keeps the queen in this diagonal, nothing is going to happen. So he pushed the pawn to b3, king h5, b2. And now from here, the critical chess starts. b2, check, king comes, check. And after queen e4 check. Here, black can't make the queen because the queen is covering it. And now the king is actually having only 2 squares. King g8 and king h8. Which move will you play from the black side? Which move will you play? Only one keeps the draw. Other move loses the game for black. So what are you going to play with the black piece? Like, you have to move the king, but wait. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the best move. Okay, so all those who came up with this amazing move, king h8, you are extremely wrong. It's losing. King G8 is the right move. And in the game, as Black is having a couple of seconds, I was watching the game live. He played King H8 and now it's losing for Black. I'm going to say what? If King G8, White is going to play King to G6. This is the idea, so that in this position there are no checks that Black can give to White. But now Black is going to make a queen. White is forced to capture the queen, and now comes the phenomenal, brilliant move, queen check. Giving up the queen, and it's a draw. It's a still move. And if you try to even pull king back, it's going to be a check. You try to bring the queen, and I'm going to move the king. You take, and it's again a stalemate. If you try to push the pawn, it's going to be started checking, and it's going to be checking, and it's a draw. So it's going to be draw. And I think after here, even if White tries to pull the king back, it's going to be check. Now you have to play, if you play here, I'm going to repeat it. If you try to pull the king back, I'm going to capture this pawn. So you have to push the pawn, and now I can again start to give checks. And guys, remember, you can't go here. It calls it mate. So such a lovely move, such a brilliant move. I think definitely this move was missed by the grandmaster. Very hard to find, very hard, but brilliant idea, I would say. That is the reason he played King H8. And now what happened in the game is King G6. He made the bishop. Still the same idea, basically a funny moment. He captured it. And the basic idea here is now you can't go for playing the queen check, because after it takes, it's a check. If the king would have been on here, it would have been ended in a draw. So here Black gives a check, and now it's actually winning. Queen F5, check, Queen F4, check, King G6, and on the move number 80, with the black pieces, George decides to resign the game, because it's over, guys. Like, if you try to give me a diagonal check, I'm going to block with the queen. And now if you are going to give me a horizontal check, it's a queen trade, and it's winning for White. And if you won't give me a check and you play something else, like White idea is to give a checkmate like this or a checkmate like this. You can't stop both. Like, if you actually you are not having move, like if you stop like this, I'm going to do a mate like this. So it's already made. That was the reason after King G6, Black decides to resign the game, and a phenomenal win by Magnus Carlsen. A brilliant play in the end game. So, what's the conclusion? Is French defense a good opening? Yeah, French defense is a good opening, I think. The reason I'm saying the French defense is a great opening, because despite, like, Magnus Carlsen actually took the win in the end game. And I personally feel this idea, I would say, which was around, if I go back, like, let's take the idea of over here, where White gave a check to the Black king. This idea, I think, was actually brilliant by Black. He moved the king, and he went for this h5, h4, and he get this rook like here. If Black wanted, he could have gone for capturing this pawn, but he kept the tension. If he would have simply released the tension, I think White would be having a very good compensation. But as Black kept the tension on the board, White was getting nothing. And not this rook swing, such a brilliant move. You know, I think White, with the white pieces Magnus Carlsen was playing, or as if there was any other player, I think Black is actually the one who is in the driver's seat and having a good control of the game. But Magnus Carlsen managed it well and pull off the win. It was extremely hard, but I think very well played by George. I think this game was very well played by George, like showing a masterclass by French defense. I think very well played by him. But in the end, Magnus Carlsen took it. So I think my conclusion is that French defense can be conclude that it's a very good opening. As in the end, which was also a draw, Magnus Carlsen took it. As we know that the game of chess is of blunders, of mistake. If any player make a mistake or a blunder, the game is eventually over. But definitely French defense can be played in the high level as well, as Yana Kumniyashi, the player who have been selected to fight against Ding for the world champion title, plays it. Even Anish Giri, I think everybody knows Anish Giri, plays it. And even I think one of the most best move against E4, even the engine recommends to play E6, the French defense. So I think French defense can be considered as a good opening. If you master every theory in the French defense, then you can definitely go for playing it. As in the French defense, there are moments where you think that the position is wrong, but nothing is wrong. It's absolutely fine. You just need to know the ideas of every variation, and once you get the ideas of every variation, you are going to be completely fine. You just need to practice a particular opening 10,000 times, even lakhs, even crores of times, and eventually you're going to be master in it. So yeah, so that's from my side. If this game actually helped you to improve your chess level skills, then make sure to like the video. If you're new to my channel, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm going to come up with these interesting analysis of the game. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.